I don't need a lawyer to do it.
Your imagery is beautiful.
Thank you.
Where's Kathy?
Kathy, right there. Kathy, you know who this is?
Joey, look, come on.
Where is she?
Is it Joey?
That's Joe.
Hey,
Oh,
look
come on.
at
How are you?
We lived across the street from him in Melrose.
you.
Oh, come on.
Good to
How
see
you doing?
Doing well.
Brother's all right?
Yes, cousin Rose.
So when you're writing, did you first write your part of it and then switch into the persona of your grandfather, our grandfather, and then begin his? Or were you going back and forth, or start a short story?
Years ago, when I came back from Italy for the first time, I started interviewing Grandma Rotolo. I started interviewing everybody, and I started writing their story. My story was nothing back then. To me, it was. And then, alternately, somebody said, "Well, write a story about what it was like to go back to Italy." So I had that in the background. Now, as I'm doing it, and I used Grandpa Rotolo to create Mustache Pete, the character that I used. So I channeling that broken English and all that. I had been doing it, but now that I'm really putting this book together, and I have a much better sense of who Grandpa Rotolo was, not just based on our stories from him, but based on all these people in Italy who told me stories of him, the old men who told me stories about, what a little troublemaker he was when he was a kid. Because Grandpa seemed to have this kind of angel devil thing about him. He could be a little crafty, but he also was very holy. Went to church every day, prayed, carried the Madonna in the Melrose procession, and Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So it's a matter of getting this whole sense of him, and I got a much better sense of, when the family talks about Grandpa Rotolo, we only say nice things. But Uncle Carmi was the one who told me the story of robbing the poor box. In fact, that's in that's in your memoirs, that story. But the story that I heard from Gumari was that he was praying at the church, and Father Perini felt bad for him and gave him a job. So who knows? But
I believe the latter.
that he was praying.
Yeah. Well, because Grandpa was always praying. We go, what's he? Who is he?
But we don't know what it's like to start.
We go, who is he talking to?
No, he was
talking to God. And Grandpa said, oh, he's talking to God. He spends hours talking to
Oh,
God.
yeah.
So what's the answer to my question?
The answer is this: that I, over the years, I had written their whole story, the story of our grandmothers, and that, and then as I came back to this story, I took some from there that I was using, and so it's right now what I'm doing is I'm channeling all of that in these alternating chapters. So I'm very aware of the difference in the voices, because there was a lot more certainty. Like, for example, there's a chapter in which I'm picking, my family in Italy takes me they said, come on, we're gonna go out to the house in the country. So I think, oh, we're going out to the house in the country. No, I had to go pick cherries, I had to go pick fava beans. My back hurt so bad, and I understood why they let my Grandpa Rotolo would take his boots and shoot him and say, I'm done with this work, But when Grandpa Rotolo, in fact, the other day I drove past 15th, I can't believe how small that backyard is. He had such a big garden back there. And he would sing to his plants and talk to his plants, and now I understand. Well, I didn't understand it back then. And he would tell me, Federico, this song, he's Freddy. He said, this Freddy, this plant, you got to sing to this plant. Otherwise, the next time I come, the plant would be like waving, be stronger. Did he really do that, or was it just the water and the wind? I couldn't, Yeah.
It was excellent work. You taught me a lot. I just learned a lot today. Thank
Yeah?
you.
What did you learn?
How to put it together.
How to put it together? I don't know how to put it together. I think,
How,
okay.
You're actually very fortunate to have people back, your relatives back in Italy, so you could go back and create a story Do you have you lived in Italy for a period of time?
Yeah.
How long?
This first trip was 1978. I was 25 years old when I went back. I'm just about to be 26. And I would go to Italy every summer and stay with the family. And because I was teaching high school. And so I would take 2 months, I would go and live with them in the summer. And then I'd study Italian throughout the year. But it wasn't the Italian that they spoke. Well, they did speak that Italian. Those are a few of them who went to school. And then after I started getting other jobs, I had a Fulbright where I was in Italy for 9 months at University of Salerno. I spent a lot of time in Italy in the last
Do you
4
have
years.
citizenship there?
I'm 8 documents away. They rejected 8 documents, for different reasons, and I got 3 more months to finish that, which I hope to do. I will, and I'll get my citizenship, because then, if I could prove, I own no other property in the United States. If I could prove that that's my main property, no tax on your home. The reason why houses are going so cheap in Italy is because once upon a time people had big families. Like my grandfather was one of 11. And all those 11 people had houses. And they had kids. And those kids had houses. And now all of a sudden families are 2 people, 1 kid, 2 kids. So these people are dying and they got nobody to leave their house to. So they leave it to relatives who don't want it, because why? Every house you have after your home, the taxes go up. So if they have 2 or 3 houses, they're paying a lot of money in taxes. That's why they just want to give them away. The house that I bought, this lady, I offered her $55,000. She wanted $85,000. I offered her $55,000. She took it eventually. And she didn't even ask me to give her more. There was no counter, she just said, I just got to get this thing out. I'd rather have $55,000 in the bank than have to pay the government tax every year. So my taxes will be less as a Italian citizen, and 0 if I could prove that that's my main. But it's hard to prove it, because how am I going to go to work every day from Italy?
Yeah, I really enjoyed what I heard. Myself, it touched me in many personal ways.
I can hardly hear you.
I said I really enjoyed what I heard.
Thank
As an
you.
immigrant myself, it touched me in many personal ways. I got a couple questions for you. Before questions, I want to say that if you want to establish Italian residency, it's not an easy thing to do, because the carabinieri come unannounced to make sure you're actually living there. So they may come tomorrow, or they may come 6 months from now, just to give you a heads up.
Yeah.
However, what I wanted to ask is a very broad question. I'm not sure it can be easily answered. This is a memoir of
Stand up and
sorts.
speak out.
This is a memoir of sorts. What's the difference between history and fiction?
I'll tell you, I think everything is fiction. Everything. I think everything, we make up the story that we want to tell. If I write my life story, you write my biography, to me it's all fiction. The words come from you. Even a journalist, I say it's fiction. That's my studied opinion, that everything is. And you have to figure out, it's not the writer's responsibility, it's the reader's responsibility for interpretation. How are you going to interpret this? If you interpret it literally, or you're going to interpret it figuratively, in other words, it's the imagination. I could write a sentence 10 times over 10 different years, and the words may change a little bit, but the meaning may change a lot depending on what I put into it. So I would say that I'm calling this a memoir because it's writing about, and most everything in there. Okay, for example, the play that I'm working on is what I call imaginative memoir. In other words, I know a lot of the things come from my life story, but I still am feeling that there are things that I can't talk about. And somebody said, well, if you were Jewish, you would talk about it, you'd make $1 million selling the book. The Italians don't talk about these things. It's hard to say. So to me, and there's some things I'll never know. You know, my mother died with a million lies in her head that she never explained to us. You know, were they truths? Well, they came out of her mouth as truth, but, you know, were they lies? We can't tell. So for me, it's a matter of what makes the most sense in what I want to. Do I want to say the Gardaphe family were like saints? Then I would tell it one way. Do I want to tell a lot of the sins that we had in our family? I'm going to tell it a different way. So to me, it's all fiction in that we choose the words that we use to write. It's very hard today, I think, to determine, this idea of being objective. What does it mean to be objective as opposed to be the subjective? I think everything anybody does or anything everybody writes is subjective. You know, the person who made this podium and people who put the tape on it, we could learn something about why they did that way if we knew a little bit about them. But it's still a podium. So my bottom line is that whatever is the story, whatever is the artifact that is created by somebody, whatever it is, the story in the newspaper, whatever, always remember that a human being created it. Vico once said that we can only understand that which man created. We can't understand always what God created. No matter how you try to study plants and all that stuff, we can only really understand what man created. And to me, words are created by men, and they're just as subject to the false as they are to the truth. So you have to be very careful when you're reading this. So memoir to me this is based on my life story. Fiction, I totally make this stuff up, but I can't really make up things that, I'm not a science fiction writer. Science fiction writers do, but I also think that science fiction writers take things from their own way of life. Look, what makes a piece of writing successful or not successful is, do you connect to it? Is there something here that you can connect to? And if not, we leave the writing alone. And if so, we continue reading it. And so that's my goal, is to make writing that people can connect to.
Is the play a one-man play?
It's a one-man show. Yeah. Denise?
Fred, so with the language, how difficult was it for you to communicate? I mean, if they're speaking dialect and you don't know the dialect, and how much of the Italian that you learn in school were they able to understand? So how long did it take you to really have a comfort level with that?
It probably was a couple of years. A couple of summers going back. Before, because I asked somebody, say comodo, say comodo. No, I said, say comodo. And you know what that means? Are you a toilet? And I was asking them, I thought I was asking them, are you comfortable? There was like 6 of us in the back seat of a car. I said, say comodo. And everybody was quiet. I said, and my friend Giuseppe said, Fred, you just asked her if she's a toilet. A commode, So it took a long time for me to be able, but I did know the language, like my brother Michael still speaks dialect. He doesn't even, he thinks it's Italian. But I can't wait to bring him to Italy, because the same thing that happened to me is going to happen to him. Because he thinks he can speak it. But it's really the dialect that we learned from my grandpa Rotolo, which was Barese, not even Barese, Castellanese dialect, and let's go, Chamonix. Chamonix instead of andiamo. I knew those words, fetch a fridge, it's cold. Whatever we learned from Grandpa, I was able to communicate there, and they but I'm in my family. They had a nice little restaurant. What was it called? The bar, Tavola Calda. It wasn't really a big restaurant, and they closed it down. We had lunch in there, and I said, "Dove la bacaus?" Because for us, if you wanted to go to the toilet, you went to the bacaus, and I didn't even know back then when I was a kid that bacaus meant they went behind the house for the toilet, but that's what became the toilet. And so they looked at me, what the heck are you, bacaus, what is this bacaus? And then I used French, toilet? Ah, toilette, So it took a while. But the more my little cousin, who now has a 9-year-old son of her own, who used to teach me the dialect. She would teach me the dialect, I would teach her English. But even when they had English in school, all my cousins took English for 10 years in school, they can't speak English. You know.
So how far out of the small town did you have to go for people to speak Italian like you learn in school here in the United States? How
Oh, no.
far out?
I mean, they can understand the Italian because it came through the news and stuff. But if they went to school, they could read it. But mostly they would speak dialect, mostly. And they all thought that when they shifted into dialect, that I wouldn't know what they're talking about. But I did, because I heard it all the time from my grandfather. I didn't know every single word, but I could tell. You're talking about me, you're not talking about that. To me is if you can understand it, they're talking about you. If you can't understand it, they're not talking about you.
You also learned from this Italian woman, this older Italian woman in the city.
No, I took for 4 years, every Wednesday.
Proper Italian.
Right. It was a teaching assistant at Northwestern University through the learning exchange they used to have. I met with her every Wednesday. She took me to first year, second year, third year, fourth year books. And then when I finished all the books, I said, what can we do now? She goes, you should start translating. So I translated all the letters Grandpa's mother sent to him. There's a letter in there where she says, my grandpa had announced to her that he's getting married. And she says, you made the blood in my veins freeze when I heard this news. I know you will never come back. Your mother will die. Everybody will die. You will never see us again. And, oh my God, it was all this guilt she laid on him.
Like Moonstruck.
Yeah, it's like Moonstruck. And poor Grandpa, he had to live with that, you know. You know how Mom used to, when I was moving to New York, she said, they're lying. They don't want to give you a job. And when she couldn't convince me they didn't want to offer me the job in New York, she went to my son and she said, your nanny's going to get sick and you go in the hospital and you're going to have to come home. That's how much she wanted me not to leave. You know, and I imagine that with Grandpa's mother. She didn't want him to. He was the only one to leave. He had a sister who left, who married somebody and they moved to Argentina. And then his brother wanted to follow him, Michelangelo, wanted to follow him to the United States. He went into the army in Ethiopia in the 20s, right after Grandpa, because he was only like 2 or 3 years younger than Grandpa. And at that time, in 1923, the United States made a law, the Exclusion Act, the Alien Exclusion Act, and they reduced the number of people who could come from Italy. So between 1923 and 1963, Italian migration was really limited. There was a little bit after World War II of family that was able to come. And then the next big wave came in 1950s when the Cuomos came. And Grandpa was told, he used to call them the immigrants with the wings, because they flew. He took a boat, they flew over.
You were fortunate that your family stayed connected. My grandparents on my mom's side, when they came from Bari, my grandmother and grandfather left their family behind, never stayed connected. So I'm sure I have family there, but have no
We'll find
family, I
him.
don't know
Come.
names, nothing.
Come, we'll find him.
Okay. Right?
Fred, you talk about your family. My latest kick is family history. I think I've given up on all the means of carrying on our ethnic identity. And I think, well, let's go back to the family. If every family would write their family history, at least they'd know the basic facts, they know the town they came from, and that could solidify our heritage for generations or forever.
Mm-hmm.
But that means genealogy and all that stuff. Did you use any of those?
Oh, sure.
tools?
Sure, I used the Mormons. The Mormons saved all the records, and my sister brought me. We bought records. We found the boat my grandfather came in on, and all that. Yeah, we used what. And in fact, my Uncle Carmen, God rest his soul, started the family tree. Auntie Lori said, "Okay, Freddie, you got to do it." And I said, "No." I gave it to my son, who's turned it into. I don't know if you've seen it online. He's got pictures on there now. He's got all these. So it's important to keep that genealogy. But when I went back to Italy, I went into the archives, and I got my grandfather's parents. And when you do your citizenship, you got to get all the birth certificates and all that, death certificates and all that. So I've done that, but I had the once you make friends with one of those people, which is hard to do, who work in the archives, he took me back to these really old books, and he says, your family first came here from Naples. The name Rotolo was from Naples, and it was a baron who brought land. That's how he knew. It was written in the registry that he had land. I don't know whatever happened to that. But everybody kind of disintegrates from royalty, according to, Mark Twain was really good with that. But the idea of finding out these records, 1549. But what people don't understand is that inside your name is your history. Rotolo. What does Rotolo mean? Around. Yeah, but you know what it really means? There used to be a wheel in front of the nunnery, in front of the convent, that when people had kids that they didn't want, they put them in the slot and they turned it. And the nuns would take it. Rotolo went to the people. Somewhere along the line, somebody. The name Esposito,
Yeah.
out of marriage. Esposito, out of marriage. And there's a whole bunch of other names that identify. Because everybody thinks, oh, we're so prim and proper, and we're so, we've all got these stories there, and that's the danger. I mean, when I was a kid, I was told my Uncle Louis died on the golf course, so I thought he got hit in the head with a golf ball. No, he was trying to rob the golf course, and they shot him. But that was the way. Indian boundary, Louis Fusaro. My middle name is his name. And when I was 7 years old, but I didn't find this out until years later. So there's a lot, when you go into the family genealogy, it's not just dates and places, there's stories, and I interviewed there's this friend of the family, we used to call her Gomare. Well, Gomare means godmother. Gomaria, her name was, Gomaria. And she was my grandfather's friend from his hometown. I even saw where she was born in Castellana. So I went to interview her, and she goes, well, you know the story of your grandmother. Poor girl, she killed herself. I go, sure I know. I didn't know the story. I said, but sure. I said, but could you tell it again? She told me the story. I was freaked out. My grandmother committed suicide. Why? She had postpartum depression. People didn't know how to deal with it back then. Anyway, the bottom line was to find these things out, because I was always told that my real grandmother had died in the Depression. And I thought the Depression, I had heard from my family, it was really tough times and all that. Could it kill somebody? Well, a pandemic kills people, so why couldn't a depression? I was only 5, 6, 7 years old when I heard these stories. But then when I was like 20 years old speaking to Gumaria, and she told me the story, and then I went and told my cousins the same story, and one of my aunts, not you, Auntie Laura, said, don't listen to Freddie. She said, don't listen to Freddie. They didn't want that, no. And are they right? In some ways they might be right. But for me, no, I had to know. Anyway, so you gotta be careful about doing genealogy now.
Well, I think there's some things coming together now that encourage family history. And you've got this Italian program of Italia. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I heard about it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're encouraging roots tourism. Maybe we'll give some discounts.
Now they give a name to it. To me, when did I do this? 1978. Was it 50 years ago? No, I don't know what it was. 47 years ago. That was roots tourism. Though my family thought, because my grandfather helped them buy the property because he sent the money back, they originally thought I was coming back to take his share of the property. And they were a little cold at first. But as soon as they found out that it had nothing to do with that, they, it opened up. And at first it was, they were a little bit, and I thought, well, why are they, wondering? Well, who's this guy gonna come over? I mean, first of all, everybody in Italy thinks that if you're an American there, you're rich. I mean, I was dealing with contractors, and they were like, well, we're going to do that. I said, what do you think, I'm rich? Oh, you're an American. They have this image, that we don't work for our money. I said, look, I worked my whole life for my money.
You should put that all in your book, your memoir, that part of it.
Thanks. Remind me.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Thank you. Okay.
Just too, another thing, anybody who applies for Italian citizenship has to gather all these documents anyway. You might as well write a family history, and this is one of our seminar
You're doing a
attendees
seminar? Okay.
did that, and he produced a book that's better than the one that I did.
Good. Yeah.
Was it Mr. Gardaphe? You mentioned the name Esposito. Esposito.
Right.
Okay. That's very interesting because that was my grandfather's name over in Soma. Okay. His wife, my grandmother, was from Marliano. Okay. I'm not going to tell you my name yet. This is not about me. This is all about you. I'm so proud of you. Okay. My memory is correct. Your grandma and my grandma went to Our Lady of Mount Carmel around 1908, 1909.
Yes.
Okay, and check, correct me, your grandma went into the convent?
Yes.
Grandma Bell, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Are you Marsicano?
No, I'm gonna make this real hard for you to figure out. Okay, so that takes us past 1908, 1909. Then my dad became friends with your dad in high school.
Proviso?
Proviso. You and I were in kindergarten and 4th grade together.
At Sacred Heart? Mrs. Hitt?
Mrs.
Mrs. Hitt, yes.
Father
Sister Jolenta.
Sister
Oh,
Jolenta.
my
Yes,
God.
that was ours. It was theirs.
Kathy was it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kathy was your, Kathy,
My sister. Kathy Benetton was in my class right there.
no, Kathy was your sister.
She's right here.
Okay. Michael,
Right,
Paulie,
right.
okay? And
All right.
you're Kathy, right?
Yes.
Get ready for this one. This one's gonna really, Freddie and I and you were in that dime store,
Yeah.
not
McClellan?
McClellan's, and I put a nickel in, I got a wedding ring and I gave it
Yes.
to you. Do you remember?
I kind of remember it. And I said,
Have it.
No, really, but you don't remember
Were
me.
you a neighbor?
You don't remember me.
I gotta remember you. You got hair. I don't have hair anymore. What?
Johnny Grillo.
Donnie?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Donnie!
You remember me?
Of course I remember Donnie. I'm so proud. Thank you, everybody. You remember? Donnie,
I'm Jack. Joe Caputo. There's movies of me, you, Joe Caputo. At my birthday. Yeah, I had one on. What was I gonna say? There's movies of me and you, Joe Caputo, at my birthday party. Yeah, and I my wife said Fred Gardaphe's gonna be there tomorrow. She told me this at 4 o'clock yesterday. I said, I'm going. I'm gonna go find him, so.
There's a light lunch waiting for you here when you're ready.
Thanks, Ross.
Doesn't she look like Kathy?
I thought, that's why I looked at you.
She looks like Donnie, sister. Donnie, famous cousin. Donnie. Anyway, you look like somebody I know too.
Hi, Fred. Congratulations.
Just got the 8th grade bus.
Fred,
Yeah.
can we take a picture?
Oh, I have a picture.